Hello and welcome to Endurance Minded. It's the podcast that aims to redefine what it means to reach our full potential by exploring how movement and mindset impacts our lives and how we can all work to show up as the best versions of ourselves. I'm your host, Taylor Thomas, founder at TEC, and before we get started, I've got an all call. If you're a coach or an entrepreneur in the health and fitness industry who's trying to grow your business without burning out, I want to personally invite you to apply for the Growth Circle. The Growth Circle is our business accelerator program at TEC, and it's designed specifically to serve providers like you in the health and fitness industry. People who are incredible at what they do, but they need a proven framework and real support to actually scale. Let's be real, running a coaching business can feel like a grind. You're juggling programming and client communication, marketing, admin work, and somehow you're still trying to grow your business. That's where the Growth Circle comes in. Inside the program, we help you nail down your ideal client and get really clear on what your offer is. We help you build a consistent lead gen process so you're not wondering where your next client comes from. We help you improve your sales skills without feeling salesy. And most importantly, create systems and support so that you're not doing it alone. You'll be a part of a driven community of other business owners in this space who get it. We host regular group calls, team intensives, mastermind sessions to make sure you're never stuck trying to figure it out in a silo. So if you're tired of winging it, if you're tired of trying to do it all by yourself, to recreate the wheel, figure out what levers to pull, what's broken and what's not, if you're ready to turn your passion into a business that actually works for you, I want to invite you to apply. You can find the link to the Growth Circle in our show notes. And I want you to really think about what's best for you and your business. I want you to think about how your business can really make an impact on the industry and how it can give you the life that you're excited about and make the money that you deserve, working with the clients that you love, spending time investing in the things that you care about and you're passionate about. So if this is a problem you're committed to solving and you want to take your business to the next level, again, click the link in the show notes. I can't wait to hear from you. Hello. I hope you're excited for today's episode. I am pleased to introduce and welcome to our show, Leila Entezam. She is a neuro-emotional performance coach and the author of The Heart of Peak Performance, Emotional Mastery for High-Performing Men, which is a #1 new release in mental health on Amazon. She's a thought leader in neuro-emotional intelligence, or NEI, and she integrates neuroscience, psychology, and peak performance strategies to empower high achievers to master their emotions and elevate their performance. What that really means in layman's terms is that she really focuses on all of the things that we talk about on Endurance Minded. She focuses on high performance. She focuses on mental skills, on emotional intelligence, how to harness all of the parts of who we are so that we can reach our full potential. And this one is jam-packed. Leila's been at this a very long time. She's worked with some of the top minds in the world from sport and business, and she brings all of that to our conversation. A few highlights that are worth mentioning. One, we talk about why is it that high performers excel in so many areas, but often feel emptiness when it comes to success. So they accomplish the thing that they set out to do. They very rarely fall short of their goals, but so often when they reach those goals, success leaves them feeling empty. And so we start there, and really, really fascinating. And truthfully, so much of this spoke to me personally. She talks about a lot of the things that I've been very vocal and transparent about with our listeners on this show about how I'm working to be a better version of myself, to compartmentalize and to understand and contextualize what success actually looks and feels like, and how I can show up to be the best version of myself. So really, really fascinating. If nothing else, I think that one piece is really going to hit home for so many of you. But we talk about why it is important to understand what Leila calls the why behind the what. So really understanding the root cause. She goes into what she calls her setup tool, and that's all caps SETUP. And she breaks down that to help us understand what really a full ecosystem looks like for how we process information, how we make decisions, and how we can move forward. And just really, really super tactical. So if you're looking for really guided information, really things that you can take immediately and execute into your life, this is an episode that you're going to love. Leila and I get straight into it and talk about lots of specifics. She provides really, really actionable guidance. We don't dance around the topic or the subject, and that's one of the reasons that I loved this conversation. On top of her expertise and how approachable she was, we really get into the meat of it. And she's not shy about providing real guidance, real expertise, and what will ultimately be real takeaways for you guys as you listen. So I won't belabor the point anymore. I hope you enjoy my conversation with Leila. Hi, Leila. Welcome to the show. How are you?
Hi, thank you so much. I'm good. Thank you for having me. Great to be here.
Yeah, excited to dive in. Lots to talk about. Let's kick things off where I like to start most of the conversations that I have with just a little bit of a story. So I'd love to understand what brought you to where you're at today. I always think it's interesting the twists and turns and inevitabilities that bring us to wherever we're at in life. So give us the recap. What were the twists and turns that got you to where you're at right now?
Absolutely. So I by no means followed any kind of a traditional path, in the sense that what I do today sort of didn't exist. So I have a background in neuroscience, and then I've spent a couple of decades in business. Got a master's there, and then another master's in psychology. Became a licensed mental health therapist, but I don't practice clinically. It was a way to be really immersed in what drives human behavior and allows you to create sustainable change. Sort of blended all those together into leadership coaching, but that kind of morphed into an area of neuro-emotional intelligence, which is neuroscience, psychology, and EQ. And then that morphed into bringing that to high performers. So doing neuro-emotional performance coaching for high performers, which is allowing them to understand why they do what they do, master their emotions, and optimize their choices. So nothing you can sort of look up and get a prescription for or get a roadmap for, but one thing led to another that sort of brought me there, and I'm grateful for it.
That's great. I love that. Yeah, it's always interesting. Like I said, what I feel like so many folks that I talk to, it's kind of that non-traditional, right? Like where you're at today and what you maybe started out doing. And it's just as you take in new information and new inputs, you're like, oh, maybe I'll explore this. And so I love that. Thanks for setting the stage for us. I'd love to go a little bit deeper into just in the spirit of setting the stage, understanding what or having you define for us and for our listeners what neuro-emotional intelligence is. I imagine that is not a term that everyone is intimately acquainted or familiar with. So maybe define that for us and give us a bit of background on what it is, how it shows up, why it's important.
Sure. So if you break it down into pieces, so the neuro would be your brain, understanding the way your brain works. Emotional would be emotional intelligence, and understanding why you do what you do, awareness of self and other. So it's bringing together your brain and your psychology and sort of looking at your whole self to understand the drivers behind your actions. So not just the neuroscience, not just the psychology and EQ, but the marriage of all of those.
Okay, great. So I know you work with high performers and working to help them understand how to kind of rectify this drive for high performance with that emotional intelligence, with some of these kind of feelings of, not feeling particularly satisfied when they might reach a particular milestone. What is a I throw this phrase around a lot, and it actually struck me when I was preparing for our conversation that I didn't I haven't really defined what a high performer is, and so I'd be curious what your maybe definition of a high performer is before we go deeper into this conversation. Because again, for my own edification, I was like, oh, I'm a self-proclaimed high performer or self-described, and I work with high performers, I think. But yeah, what's that from your perspective, and how do we define those individuals?
So, a great question. In my book, The Heart of Peak Performance Emotional Mastery for High Performing Men, we give a definition for high performers because, to your point, there's all kinds of definitions out there. And I mean that specifically to be people who it's almost like it's not an option in them. They have this gear that other people don't possess. And whether it is a game of table tennis, or an acquisition or an athletic event, that they just sort of have this innate thing in them to drive and push and succeed and overcome. And they are able to push that to limits that most other people can't and can't even fathom.
Hmm. Can you provide any insight on why those people are the way they are? Is there something that happens, something that creates that drive that is inherent in them versus, like you said, other people that just can't imagine or have no interest in pushing themselves that far or that hard?
Sure. So I subscribe to a nature and nurture model for that. I believe that there's some parts of it that are just in your genetics, in your upbringing, in your just sort of innate in you, in your early experiences. So both of those, the nature and the nurture aspect of that. And in particular, the statistics show that, for example, in entrepreneurs, that so many of them have troubled childhoods. So some of that, I believe, is for high performers is birthed in having early on challenging experiences that sort of strengthen this resilience in them that they then carry on throughout their lives.
Mm. Okay, interesting. A lot of clarity for myself personally, so
Right.
that's helpful. As a serial entrepreneur who now is unable to do anything else, the pieces are starting to come together. So thanks
Right.
for clarifying. Um, why? So I want to dig a little deeper into the high performer piece. Why is it that high performers excel in so many areas, but and I know one of the things you talk about in your book um, is that they excel in so many areas, but there's often this kind of emptiness that comes with success. And I'd love to really drill in here because um, it's such a pervasive thing, and it's this arrival fallacy kind of aspect of you think this is going to be the thing that really finally you'll be happy, or you'll finally be at peace, or you could rest, you could take a vacation, and of course we know that these individuals really struggle to actually find themselves in that place once they reach the goal. So set the stage for me and help me understand why they excel in so many areas, but this one kind of key and central area seems to elude them. What's going on there?
So several things. One is that the to have the hyper focus, oftentimes what they do is they try to suppress emotions and focus on the things that they feel they can control more in their environment. So if I told you the tactical pieces, if it's an athlete, I'm giving you a training regiment. If it's a business leader, I'm giving you a strategy for success. Then there's a lot of doing there, and I can focus on that doing and give a high performer a doing task. They'll knock it out of the park. right? But if you are talking about the emotional elements, there's a lot of unpredictability. There's challenges in control. It requires another person who also has emotions that I can't control. It is often a realm that I fear getting stuck in. And so I don't go to the emotional spaces because I feel like I'm either going to get stuck there, it's going to hold me back, it's going to slow me down. And so they try to stay out of that while strengthening these other muscles that they feel does sort of contribute more to their success. And so you can do that, and it does get validated because it does feed your ability to drive and do what others can't, and go where others won't, and get to that success. But then you sort of stop, and our brains are wired for connection, and so you can't avoid that. You get to this place and you kind of think, hey, I've got all this stuff, I've got all these experiences, I've got all these accolades and success, but there's an emptiness that comes from, where do I feel safe? Where do I feel seen? Where can I be vulnerable? Where, what spaces do I trust? Who's in my inner circle? And when I spent so much time validating for myself the idea that, oh, I can't be vulnerable, I can't be open. And now I'm looking around and saying, hey, but because I wasn't, I'm in the aftermath of that. I'm now living in the emptiness that created, and looking for, how do I get out of that? And a lot of times what happens in particular, by the time someone sort of gets to my doorstep, is that they may not have that language to say, hey, guess what? I've achieved everything in life and now I'm empty. So, but they'll know that something is missing, something doesn't feel right. And so part of our journey is giving that language.
What are the tools, if any, to recognize that maybe while it's happening? So before they find themselves at you, for instance, are talking to you, or like, well, okay, now I put in all this effort and I did the things and now I'm empty. I imagine that one of the goals for you and the work that you do with the individuals that you're working with is to help them develop some skills and tools to recognize this more in real time, so that they're not. So can you map that out for me, or what are those skills to maybe deploy some of this emotional IQ, or to tap into some of these things before we get too far into the deep end, and it feels like all is lost kind of thing?
So the very first place to start is with awareness of yourself. And so emotional intelligence is awareness of self and other. And the more I have self-awareness, the more it allows me to tune into awareness of other people. And so the first part of that journey is going to be self-awareness. And the biggest indication in that awareness journey is the places where you feel the greatest resistance, the places where you don't want to go, the things you don't want to touch, are where the greatest opportunities reside.
But I'm using myself as an example. So I say, okay, I hear you, but those are not fun things. Like, I just want to focus on my business, and I want to focus on the things I'm good at. And so how do I turn the corner there, or again, I'll use myself as an example, but for anybody that's a, self-proclaimed high performer, what do I, how do I do that? Or how do I, maybe the better question is, how do I recognize that that's valuable in real time, right? Because it's like you said, the tactical is the thing that you can focus on. You're like, well, I can see that that's where I should put my energy. This other stuff feels like maybe it doesn't yield enough tangible results or meaningful results to actually pull me in that direction. So how do I shift my brain to make that thing hold as much value, or that skill set as much value as the tactical?
That is definitely part of the challenge of the journey, because if you look at whether it is the ROI or winning a competitive event, In when you focus on tactical, you have measurable, more immediate results that are tangible, that you can sort of reference and as indicators of success. In the emotional space, it doesn't work that way, in the sense that when you're building these tools, when you're growing your EQ, when you're growing your self-awareness, when you're growing your ability to be vulnerable and open and connect with other people, that happens over time, and it doesn't often, it have these markers along the way. And so often you wake up, at one point, some period of time down the line, and say, oh my God, I kind of feel different, or things aren't the same, and I'm not really sure how I got here. And so part of that, it becomes just trusting that process. That, hey, I'm telling you, I promise you, go through it, and this is where you get to on the other side. I just can't give you in week 1 you'll be here, and in week 2 you'll be here.
Mm. I've talked about on this podcast, and as well as just kind of my own research, this idea of the messy middle, right? So we have this great, we feel excited at the beginning, and then we have this thing down the road, and then basically we spend the majority of our time in the messy middle. And one of the issues that we run into in that space is this, lack of, we wrap up so much of our identity and kind of self-worth in the accomplishment piece. And when we're far away from that accomplishment, we're like, well, I don't know. Am I not smart enough? Am I not good enough? Am I not? I'd love to just get your kind of, I guess, thoughts on that process and how we define progress in the interim, from the onset of the thing that's really sexy and great, it's the new business, the thing I signed up for, the big race, and then accomplishing that thing. How do we, what's your thoughts on navigating that messy middle portion?
So in the messy middle, being able to, I always tell people that expect it to get harder before it gets easier, and the way to understand progress in that messy middle is to celebrate the small wins. So in a situation where before maybe you would have been emotionally triggered, you found yourself emotionally regulated. Something that if you a situation to be vulnerable, to be open, to connect with someone that you normally would have shied away from, a conversation where you could go deeper that you normally wouldn't have, and observing yourself doing different in these mini moments and celebrating those successes so that you can build on that over time.
That's been such a important piece, I think. And when I talk to people, whether it's athletes or people that are in leadership roles and high performers in business, it's so hard to recognize or to kind of wire yourself to see those small wins, right? We zoom out or zoom forward or look ahead, rather to say, well, the only way to define success is when I accomplish this goal. And I do know from personal experience that if you can kind of rewire your brain or shift that framework to recognize that, engaging or recognizing those small wins along the way really does change your definition of progress. You can see that, oh, today, even though I didn't accomplish this big shiny thing that I set out to do, I still made progress, right? I'm still moving in the direction, and it feels less like you're kind of in purgatory or lost out at sea, right? Because there is so much space often between it. And maybe I'll pose that as a question. Do you find that the timeline between kind of the onset of the thing and accomplishing the thing is often needs to be adjusted, or is longer than we might have thought it would be?
Well, I want to go back to something you said, that's one of the challenges for high performers, in my experience, is the fact that the idea of stopping to celebrate success is almost foreign to them, in the sense that before they've even accomplished something, once they know it's accomplishable, then they know that they're going to accomplish it. It's not a question for them, and they're already on to the next thing. And this space is so contrary to the way they function, in the sense that It's a lot about slowing down time. It's a lot about dissecting experiences, mini moments. What were you thinking? What were you feeling? Were you experiencing in your body in that one mini moment? And so breaking down time into these small slivers again is a foreign experience a lot of times for them, and that becomes part of the challenge. And to your question about the does it take longer? It's such a scope, a wide sort of range of time, because it depends on so many factors. How far removed, how far down have you shoved these experiences you don't want to look at? How open are you to this? A lot of times, high performers I work with start out with the idea that, hey, this isn't really a thing. Emotions aren't really whatever. I compartmentalize everything anyway. It's one brain. It's one database. Your whole life. There is no compartmentalizing in its truest sense. You can sort of think that you've shoved something aside or shut something off for a while, but that your entire brain database comes with you to everything that you experience. And so there isn't, the idea that oh, I don't think about that. Most of what you do is subconscious. You don't have to think about it.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you brought up the fact that kind of nothing happens in a vacuum or silos, right? We have this tendency to kind of say, well, that's this part of my life, and then that's my business, or that's my training, or that's my relationships, and I can and to your point that they're all interconnected, and it's kind of like the how you do one thing is how you do everything, kind of approach. How does So we have this high performer, we have this individual that values progress and reaching their goals, maybe arguably over all else, and but they've also recognized that some emotional EQ is part of the equation, and they're listening to us talk, and they're like, okay, I see that it's not just these separate things. I can't truly compartmentalize, but I would that person still is driven and goal oriented, and they still have things they want to accomplish. And so how does the improved emotional intelligence, and I'd love for you to weigh on the emotional regulation part, how does that help that individual be better? How does it help them respond better under pressure and still be in their body and in their mind, which is not going to it's not going to be a wholesale change. How does this make them better?
So what happens is you process information emotionally before you do sort of cognitively and logically. So that the data sets of your emotions, the data sets of your somatic awareness, they are relevant data sets in the way your brain is processing information anyway. The way it's making you better is because you're now accounting for that data set rather than ignoring it. So there's a tool in my book called Setup. It's essentially a way for you to take a quick inventory of the factors that are affecting your decision making. We think that so often the decisions we make are just this, I thought about something and I thought about the answer, I thought about the approach, and that's all there was to it. But it's so much more complicated in your brain. So the Setup tool, the S is for your somatics. And so it's what are the physical sensations you're experiencing? The E is for your emotions. What do you feel about this current situation? The T is for your thoughts. What thoughts do you have about it? The U is for your universe. So what else is in your universe? Did you, almost get hit by a car on your way here? Are you excited about an upcoming vacation? Did you have an argument with a loved one? So what else is happening? Because remember, it's one whole brain. To your point about earlier, it's not a work brain and a home brain and an athlete brain. It's one brain. And the P is for your physiology. How well did you sleep? When was your last bowel movement? Are you hungry? Are you actually full? What are your blood markers? So all of that is affecting the decisions that you're making all day, every day anyway. So you're better served taking inventory of that and accounting for that in the choices that you make, so that you are the architect of your choices of your life rather than sort of it happening to you. And using Setup allows you to do that more comprehensively.
I'm glad you went into that. That was actually one of the things that I wanted to talk about. I saw that setup framework and really struck me that that helped to identify all those different areas, like we said, that, it's not just like, this is my work brain. It's like, oh, there really is this entire ecosystem at play all the time. I'd love to dive deeper into we've already touched on it, but the universe piece, I think that's a really great way, or I really appreciated just that language to describe kind of everything that's going on, because I know, again, I'll use myself as an example because it's all I can really speak from is, I'm very quick to be like, well, that doesn't impact this thing. This is just a decision I have to make about X, Y, and Z. And despite the fact that I didn't sleep and I didn't have time to eat or I didn't prioritize eating breakfast this morning and I was on a plane or whatever, I pretend like that doesn't matter. So I'd love to, because I think it's important in terms of what I recognize as probably the thing that gets in my way the most is I don't give credence to the universe piece, right? I'm like, okay, blinders, this is just, we're going to move forward. And then it just becomes just so much harder than it needs to be, or less fulfilling, or more complicated, or whatever. So again, maybe in the spirit of trying to deploy tools, or develop tools and then deploy them before we crash and burn, what can we do from your perspective to have, I'm not sure if the word is more control, but maybe more awareness over our universe, and use that to reach our goals, to still move us, in the direction of high performance?
So I can't tell you how often this universe piece becomes relevant in my work. If a client comes to me with a situation, something happened in the boardroom, on the field, wherever, something happened. The first question is always, what else is in your universe? Because we want to know what's the totality of what's affecting you and eating your limited brain bandwidth in this moment, so that we understand what are the factors that are affecting your decision making. And so, the idea that I'll give you a simple example. A couple weeks ago, I woke up one morning, and I'm a morning person. I kind of get up and I'm ready to go, and I'm in a good mood. And I woke up and I was just in a mood. And rather than giving credence to that, leaning into that, it's just going to be that kind of day, I stopped and I was like, all right, Leila, what's going on for you? So the same sort of, setup tool. Can you identify something that's feeding this mood? And as I went through my setup, and I was like, no, I really don't have anything. And that allowed me to let it go, as opposed to just sort of, subscribing to it as truth. So, back to your question about, hey, how do we build that? Just stop. If you do nothing else, do an inventory of your setup. And in that, ask yourself, what else is in my universe? What else is going on for me today? Did I eat breakfast? Did I, kiss my kids goodbye? Did I, when they left for the day, did I, whatever?
And then when we take that inventory, and let's say that we find something that is off, then how do we process that, or how do we pull in that information to change our approach? So like, yeah, I had a fight with my wife and I didn't sleep well, and I can identify those things. Now, what actions do I take?
So looking at how is that affecting what's happening right now? So let's say, for example, it was you were short with a client, you snapped at someone. When you take that inventory and you think, okay, well, I didn't sleep well. That's kind of got me edgy and aggravated. Maybe I had that extra cup of coffee because I didn't sleep well. That's got me a little more hyped up. And then I had a disagreement with my wife, so I don't feel seen. I don't feel heard. We're arguing. There's stress there. So now I'm able to say, okay, if snapping at my client, I was at a 8 out of 10. Man, maybe 1, 2, 3 of that 8 out of 10 was really about these other things. And so I'm able to regulate my reaction to the thing to be more appropriate to the thing, and understand how much of that reaction was actually because of something else.
I love that. That's such like approachable tool, because I often feel like too so many times when we talk about emotional EQ and regulation, I think um, one of the deterrents that I've found is it feels like such a long road, right? You're like, I got all this stuff going on, and I really do want to be better. I know that these things are an issue keeping me from feeling fulfilled or happy or even executing well in the direction of the things that I say that I want, but it just feels heavy and you don't have time for it, and so you move on. So this feels very actionable, where you're like, okay, great, I can do this quick kind of scan, I can take stock and then just pull back and recognize that there's a bit of context here, and I don't have to bite somebody's head off, or I can go home
Exactly.
and have a better conversation. So that's great. I appreciate you sharing that. um another area we kind of, I feel like you touched on a little bit, talking about like what's the reason. We're talking about context. I know one of the other areas that you work with folks on is understanding their why, and you refer to it as the why behind the what, or I know that's one way that you've kind of positioned it. um this is something I'm very, very interested in. I love talking about this for like myself, and this has been a very key piece of helping me personally be less of a mess, truthfully, right? Just be, this person who just plows ahead for it all at all costs. um it's I'd love to hear your just again definition and kind of take on what is that, the why behind the what for you, and then maybe we can go a little deeper into what that sounds like.
Sure. So the why behind the what is that the what is the external manifestation. It is the what is it that you did. So let's go back to the example where you snapped at somebody. That snapping at somebody was the what. We want to understand the why, which is the deeper driver of what got you to react in that way. Because understanding the why is where you're able to then create more sustainable behavior change. So
Hmm.
let's say in that snapping example, I said, all right, Taylor, what I need you to do from now on is I need you to, count to three before you react to someone. Okay, we addressed the what you did. We gave you a tool for that. But to address the why is to say, what is it that gets you to react in this way in situations like that? Maybe it's that I feel yeah, I'm insecure. Maybe it's that, okay, well, where did that insecurity come from? Maybe it's that I don't feel seen by this person or in situations like this. Okay, well, what would allow you to fulfill that? And so when you understand why is it that in a situation like this, I react in a way like this, I'm better positioned to then create a behavior change to not be in that situation again. So that tool for all right, Taylor, what I need you to do from now on is, count to three before you react to someone. That tool helps. It helps on that surface event of the what you did. Understanding the why and addressing that gives you then that more a deeper tool to be able to work with.
Hmm. How do we use that with so that's a tool for like me to control or to work on my response. How do we use that with like a group of people, right? So say we have like a team. How would that our understanding, kind of our collective why, is there a way to leverage that as like a communication tool, or say like, oh, I can kind of understand where you're coming from? I'm just curious, like, what's the interplay with that when it gets outside of me and it starts to be in, a boardroom setting or a team environment with athleticism, or anything else?
So you just turn that same question around. Is it understanding? So, why did this team, this person, this leader, why did they react in that way, as opposed to what was the reaction that they had? So the athlete, doesn't win an event, and they react a certain way. That reaction was their what? Then it's understanding why. What's the story you're telling yourself that got you to then react in this way?
Hmm. Is there how does the if at all how does the setup tool come into that ecosystem? So now it feels like we're pulling in some of these different pieces. How do we then deploy that again? Like that's with me, but so often the reason I'm asking is, and as I'm sure you're aware, you know, I can work on me, but then I walk into my office and there's a bunch of people and they're asking me for stuff, and this staff member's mad at me, and then they're mad at somebody else, and there's investors and board, right? A million things. So then how does that, what role does the setup, or how do we use that to then like work on these I guess just like as a communication strategy to kind of, hopefully make our lives a little easier, because it always feels like so often, if I was just in a bubble, maybe things would be a little easier, but then I go out in the world, right, and it's not just about me, it's about my interactions and interplay with other people and other personalities who have these different whys. So give me a way to like deploy this so that I can smooth that out as it gets further and further away from me.
So I can start with my own setup, and then I can fill in the blanks on what I know about you. Let's say you and I are engaging, what I know about you in your setup, and then I can get curious about the rest. So, for example, let's say you and I, had an argument. And so if I think about, I won't know what you're feeling physically, so your somatics, your emotions. I can ask you, how do you feel about this thing? What are you thinking? Help me understand. In your universe, maybe I know that just got back from vacation. Maybe I know that you're in financial strain. Maybe I know or don't know that you physically have something going on. But at least I can fill in the blanks on what I know, and I can get curious about the things that I don't within those setup buckets.
Okay. Yeah. So again, the universe is a big piece of this. Like we talked about it earlier, but I mean, yeah, if somebody flies off the handle or doesn't receive information well, so often it is because of some sort of external or something in their universe, right? Like the same examples we talked about with ourselves, they have that same experience, and we don't know what they're bringing to that conversation. So it's always just a good reminder, right? We make those things mean something about ourselves oftentimes, and there's these things we don't know about. I love the curiosity piece too, because it's quick to just shut that down, right? Shut that
Mhm.
conversation down, shut that person down, versus curiosity feels like it would be a much more productive way to try to move forward versus just being mad or being resolved or, whatever, screw that person.
Mhm.
um, okay,
One of
that's
the
awesome.
Well, if I could just add something to that, one of the
Hmm.
things that I always tell people is when your reaction to a thing is greater than the thing, something is off. And so
Mm,
if you and I just got in a fight about something we normally wouldn't fight about, or if your reaction to something was way disproportionate, either if I know you, then it would be if it was disproportionate to you, or if I don't know you and it was disproportionate to kind of, either where my intentions were or how I would sort of think somebody would react to this, then I can stop and check in and say, hey, I'm kind of curious that wasn't really the reaction I expected or I thought based on at least where I was coming from. And I'm curious how you took what just happened or maybe, how did you interpret that? What's the story you told yourself and see if we can align our definitions of that experience.
mm. Yeah. Oh man, that really hits home. And that's actually been a tool. I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's been one of the things for me personally that it's been an easy check. It's like that feels like an outsized response to this thing, right? It's a quick phone call. And then you have that feeling where you're like, your blood is boiling. You get mad, you get frustrated, you get sad, and I'm like, that's what is going on. Like that's not a big deal, but I'm having a really outsized reaction to this, right? Whether it's
Right.
external. Or just internal. I think that for me has been almost one of, it's just been such a great, like easy, if I can be aware of that in real time, I can pull back. And then with the framework that you've, provided us, I think that you have a lot more tools to kind of, back up and keep things a little bit more regulated. But to round us out, I'd love to understand or just ask the question. I know your book is geared towards men, and I'm just curious why that. yeah, why that was a particular interest, or in what way do you feel like um, men are, particularly um, need this information, or yeah, what caused you to kind of gear it in that direction?
So the book is geared towards men because it is just statistically the high. I've worked with more men, so from having more male clients, and within having more male clients, observing their experience over and over, and they're telling me about a lack of resources, a lack of places where they feel understood and seen, and seeing that script repeat and saying, "Man, if there's only so many people I can meet with, how do I expand those tools?" And so I work with men and women, but because it just happens to be predominantly men, and wanting to reach a greater audience and saying, hey, here's some things I've seen to be true over and over again.
Hmm. Yeah. No, from experience, and saying, I it sounds like we work in similar spaces, or certainly attract similar people. And yeah, I mean, it is, more men tend to be, I'm having more of these conversations around, how to regulate these things with men. So yeah, personally grateful for your work, because yeah, it's been something that, it's been a lifelong journey for me. Yeah, what's final takeaway thought that you want to leave our listeners with, based on what we talked about, or anything that we left out?
I would just say the understanding that emotions matter, that they are unavoidable. It's not a place you get stuck in, and you can either take inventory of it or not. Doesn't change the fact that they're there.
Beautiful, strong statement to end on. Well, thank you so much for your time, Leila. This is
Thank
incredible, and
you.
I appreciate your contribution. It's been incredible.
Thank you for having me.